everyone, a very good afternoon and welcome back to the Analyst of Vajiram and Ravi. Today is 20th December and we shall be taking up in-depth analysis of the articles from Hindu and Indian Express. Looking into the table of contents, you will find the following articles, where the first topic is about an ethnic group turned into a militant group. We are talking here about the Houthi rebels of Yemen. Meanwhile, we'll also study about the different conflict zones across the world, since UPSC is getting into a habit of frequently asking questions from this particular theme. Then in the next topic, we will read about the earthquake disaster that has occurred in China, conquering life of more than 100 people over there. So we will read about this disaster and also its disaster preparedness or mitigation strategies. In the third one, from economy point of view, the GS3 syllabus part, we will read about alternative investment funds and what role do they play in evergreening of loans. Then from prelims point of view, we will read about two diseases. First of all, the lumpy skin disease that is prevalent in the cows or in the cattle across the world, and also disabilities related to the blood disorders, as it has been flagged recently that certain disabilities of these blood disorders will not be included in the or will not be accorded the job reservation. In our first topic, we will talk about the background and the history of the Houthis who have been causing insurgency in the Middle East, and we will also study some of the conflict zones. So what actually started as a reaction to the Israel-Gaza war in order to support the Palestinians, where Houthis re-emerged from Yemen and started seizing the Israeli containers or their warships. They have now started attacking the commercial tankers in the Red Sea, therefore obstructing and compromising with the maritime security across the Red Sea. So here we will talk about Houthis. What is the context? That because the concerns of maritime securities is raised across the world regarding the Houthi militancy or insurgency in the Red Sea. Therefore, US has also led to creation of a multinational operation in order to counter the insurgents called Houthis. Now, this is dealing with GS2 part of the syllabus, where the effect of policies, politics, and the other disturbances across the world and its impact on India's interest should be analyzed by a UPSC aspirant. Now, let's first study who are the Houthis. So, Houthis essentially are the ethnic minority groups who are living in the Arab country of Yemen, which is Sunni dominated. They are ethnic minority because they are one of the subsects of the Shia community. Essentially, they belong to the Zaidi religion. But when I'm saying they are the ethnic minority, then they are said to be in minority because the people who are preaching Zaidi religion, which is a subsect of Shia sect, these people are less than 25% in count in accordance to the total population of the Yemen. But because of the ideologies of Houthis, they have converted into a militant group from an ethnic minority to a militant group who have captured more than 70% of the total area of Yemen. And since then, Yemen's civil war has been raged, or civil war has been going on in Yemen. So Yemen forming one among the conflict zones of the world. Now, why is it known as Houthi only? Because it is named after its founder, or the person who started reviving this religion, or who was the founder of the revivalist religion. He is Badruddin al-Houthi, and after his name, the community is also named as the same. Now, when I was talking about the ideology, let's understand the ideology from the slogan that the Houthi community has adopted. The slogan, as you can see, says that Allah is great, basically enlightening the fact that they are Islamic revivalist in nature. They want to go back to Islam, or they want to preach and propagate Islam, and that too, the Shia sect of Islam. Then, because they feel that Jews have encroached upon their homeland, their motherland, therefore they are anti-Jewish. Because Jewish have established themselves in the region of Israel, they are also anti-Israelist, and therefore now you know, when the Israel and Gaza war was waged, they took sides of Gaza and not Israel. So they were opposed to Israel. Because America is providing support to Israel and they are also not liking the American imperialism, therefore they are also anti-USA. And finally, they also want to propagate the victory of Islam everywhere around the world. So here you can see that they are one among the religious propaganda as well. And what they want to form is imamate system. Imamate system is a theocratic form of government which is formed with its political leader. Political leader who's nothing but a religious leader only. Religious leader who should be a descendant from Prophet Muhammad. So because they are preaching that an imamate should be formed across the world, therefore, they also preach these particular ideologies, which is eventually responsible for converting them into a minority group to a militant movement. And it is because of their militancy, their aggravated militancy, that mighty powers like USA have also resorted to forming multinational cooperation against them, so that they will be effectively able to deal with the Yemen rebels, that is the Houthis. Now, to understand why they turned into a militant group, let's first understand their origin story. It all starts from 1990s, where a tribesman or a tribe group of Houthis, they started emerging in the Maran mountain range of the Sada province. Where is the Sada province located? It is located in the northwest part over here in Yemen. You can also observe the proximity of Sada with the Sana'a. Sana'a is the capital of Yemen. We will understand the significance of this proximity soon, but first of all, let's understand they emerged from here, the mountain range of Maran, which is in the Sada province. So this was their geographical introduction. What about their ethnic introduction? So ethnically, they followed the Zaidi religion. Now, as you know, that Islam is broadly divided into Sunni sect and Shia sect. The subsect of Shia sect is Zaidi religion. So they are an ethnic minority which is living in Yemen. Yemen is a Sunni dominated region because of the Khalifa system that happened during the Ottoman Empire. So in a Sunni dominated region, Zaidi people are living, and therefore eventually they will feel disenfranchised because initially they were very powerful community who actually established an imamate across this Arab region, but then eventually they lost their power because of the coming establishment of Ottoman Empire, also because of intrusions due to US imperialism. So because they felt disenchanted by both the regimes, that is of Saudi Arabia and USA. Why were they anti-Saudi? Because Saudi preaches Sunni religion and they are the ones who preach Shia religion. So therefore there's a conflict between Saudi and the Yemen or the Houthi that is going on. So by understanding this, we understood that they felt disenfranchised and they felt disenchanted. Now started the leadership under Badr al-Din al-Houthi and his son Hussein al-Houthi, who will start the revivalist movement in order to start and propagate the glory of the Houthi rebels and to put up the imamate system in force. So now starts the revivalist movement. This revivalist movement will now turn into an insurgent or a militant movement. Why? Because the Yemen government which was actually led by a Houthi only, but somebody, a person of Zaidi religion only, but who did not supported the Houthi idea because he felt that it was pro-Irani. So the Yemen president Saleh, he issued an arrest warrant against the leader of Houthi, and he is Hussein al-Houthi. So because his arrest warrant was issued, therefore they started insurgency under the leadership of Hussein al-Houthi. Eventually, Hussein al-Houthi died, and his death enraged the Houthi community and therefore started the first ever Sada war. Why Sada war? Because they are prevalent in the Sada region, Sada province of Yemen. So a 6-year war started between the Yemen government that was Sunni dominated and between the Houthi rebels, that is the Shia minority community. Now what happens by 2009, this insurgency started spreading to the other areas of Saudi Arabia. As you can see from this map, that Yemen shares its border with two countries. One is the Oman and then other is the Saudi Arabia. In the Saudi Arabia, in the southwestern part of it lies a region where Shia community is dominating. Mind you, that Saudi Arabia is Sunni dominated, but a part of it is also dominated by Shias. So here it also started spreading to the Saudi areas which were dominated by the Shia community. So now it became an international problem because now the insurgency is crossing the borders. So now Saudi government started interfering in its matters, in the matter especially of Yemen government, and finally led to the restorement of Yemen government. Now in 2011, a sudden spark happened in the form of Arab Spring. where a lot of people agitated against the dictatorship, eventually leading to the fallout of the Tunisian and the Egyptian dictators. This inspired the Houthi rebels as well, and they also thought to put down the dictatorship of Saleh. So, therefore, they also participated in the Arab Spring, which eventually led to the governmental fallout, and now the president will become Hadi. Now, mind you, Hadi also is not from Shia community. Hadi is from Sunni community, and he is also backed by Saudi. Therefore, they will again be discontent by this change in the government regime, and they will continue their insurgency regimes now. Now, in 2015, what happens? The overrun President Saleh, who was also a part of Zaidi group, but he did not support the ideologies of Houthis back then, he will come back and join hands with the Houthi and say that we'll form an alliance to overthrow the current regime, the current government, which is also causing a lot of economic crisis due to its corrupt regime. So therefore, a Saleh-Saudi alliance will be formed, and now this military or insurgent group will take a political favor or a political turn. So here launches the military operations, and now they capture the closest city, which is the capital city of Sana'a. So now the Sana'a is captured and the government is overthrown. Eventually, Houthi will be able to overthrow the current regime. They will also kill the ex-president Saleh, and then they will establish their own government with their executive council named as the Sovereign Parliamentary Council. Now, Saudi and Houthi wars are still going on, because Saudi Arabia definitely is not liking the new regime or the change in regime which is dominated by the Shia community, especially by insurgent group. So continuous wars will start taking place. This will lead to destabilization of the entire region. In order to have a conciliation between them, a ceasefire agreement was hit in 2023 between Saudi and Iran, Saudi and Yemen, in order to set up or in order to stabilize the borders of Saudi Arabia. So now, because Iran's ceasefire agreement was pretty successful, it also strengthened the ceasefire agreement between Saudi Arabia and Yemen, and therefore we will see that a lot of wars, a lot of small disputes stopped happening till the Israel and Gaza war broke out in this very year. So in this very year, when the Israel launched war against the Gaza, killing millions of Palestinians and causing heavy casualties, it eventually again revoked the insurgency of the Houthis, who wanted to again proclaim or reclaim the region of Red Sea. And therefore, first of all, they started putting militant operations against the Israeli containers which were moving in the Red Sea. But eventually, it turned an international flavor, and now we can see that many of the commercial containers which are passing through the Red Sea are also obstructed, missiles are launched upon them, and they are also abrupted by the Yemens or by the Houthi rebels. So this is the entire story and the entire background of the Houthi rebels. I hope it is clear to you. Now let's switch the point. Next is, what is Red Sea militancy? Now, as you know, that this militant or insurgent group has become active in the Red Sea, which is a very crucial strategic location across the world, especially when it comes to the trade routes across the world, because here is where 30% of the container moves. Here is where 10% of the total trade by value happens. So if you hamper the movement across the Red Sea, it becomes an international concern, and therefore it has been deliberated by USA, by India, by Israel and other countries as well. Now, when you talk about Red Sea, you must also understand the geographical strategic position of it. So, it is actually providing a channel of linkage between two very important parts of the world. One is the Mediterranean Sea and the second is the Arabian Sea. It has got two choke points, one in the form of Bab el-Mandeb. Let me clear the map. So, one is Bab el-Mandeb and the second is the Suez Canal. It has got access to both the choke points which are responsible for connecting the Asia with the western part of the world. It also connects Gulf of Aden. So the Gulf of Aden and Red Sea is connected by the strait called Bab el-Mandeb. So this is the importance of Red Sea geographically, and from prelims point of view, you must also remember the neighboring countries. Please remember that Jordan, while it is very close, it is not sharing a border with Red Sea. Countries that are sharing border are Djibouti, it is Eritrea, it is Sudan, it is Egypt, it is Saudi Arabia, Red Sea. So these are the countries which are bordering the Red Sea. You must remember this from prelims point of view. Again, talking about the prelims point of view, one must also remember different conflict zones across the world which has become the red spot. So first is the Iraq region. The conflicting group or the ethnic group is Yazidis, and Yazidis are ancient ethnic and religious minority in the northern Iraq region who have been undergoing genocide since 2014. Now, the displaced Yazidis remain in camp in the Iraqi Kurdistan region, and they also make the makeshift campaign over here. So Kurdistan is also related to Yazidis. So if match the column comes, you have to match Yazidis with Iraq. Then next comes Rohingya. So Rohingya belongs to the Rakhine or the Rakhine state of Myanmar or Burma. They are also heavily prosecuted, and they have formed a militant group named as the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. Then there is Boko Haram in Nigeria. This is also an Islamist militant group. Then in the Yemen civil war, who participates? The insurgent group or the militant group called Houthis, just we have read. Then in the Burundi, political crisis is going on, and here the ethnic groups to be prosecuted or the ethnic groups which are in conflict are Hutus and Tutsis. Kindly remember this because UPSC has asked these questions in the last year's prelims examination. Now, internal conflicts in Myanmar, this is Rohingya conflict, the Karen conflict and the Kachin conflict, all of them are associated with the country called Myanmar. And finally, the Moro conflict of Philippines. Here, an insurgency happened in the Mindanao. Mindanao is also famous for a volcano. So here in this region, insurgency happened between Moro rebel groups and the Philippine government. So Moro rebels are associated with Philippines. So if in case a question, a match the column kind of question comes on this, I hope you will be in a reasonable position to answer this from now. Coming to the next topic, this is about the earthquake disaster that has happened in China and claimed the life of more than 100 people over there. It deals with two parts of the syllabus. One, GS1, where we read about geophysical phenomena, earthquake being one of them, and the second one is the disaster management, which is in the GS3 part of the syllabus. Now, before starting, let's first understand what is earthquake. Earthquake in simple terms is the shaking of the earth or the trembling of the earth. Why is the earth crust getting trembled? Because of the sudden explosion or release of the energy. This release of energy happens from a point which is known as focus. So, the energy releases from a point beneath the earth crust somewhere in the astrosphere, and this is where it is known as the hypocenter because it is beneath, it is below the surface. Therefore, it is known as hypocenter or also known as focus. And if we draw a vertical line or a perpendicular line and jot it on the surface of the earth, then this point is known as epicenter. What is the significance of understanding these 2 points is because as you move away from the epicenter, the intensity of the earthquake also diminishes. So the person or the nation who's lying closer to the epicenter will be feeling more intensity as compared to any nation or any state which is towards the outer side of the epicenter or away from the epicenter. Now that we have understood earthquake, it causes because of the sudden release of energy. What causes this sudden release of energy? There could be multiple factors for it, but the most dominant one is the plate tectonics. As we know that the earth crust is nothing but a scrambled crust or scrambled plates which are floating on asthenospheres. Because they are floating, there is a relative movement between them. This relative movement could be in the form of a transform fault or could be in the form of divergence, could be form of convergence, etc. And because of these relative movements of the giant tectonic plates across each other, they rub off, they create huge friction, huge stress, and therefore huge amount of energy. This energy though only comes out on the surface once it finds a vent or a fault. So therefore, regions where faults are available or faults are prevalent are very, very vulnerable to get the impact of the earthquake. So this is what we have understood from earthquake. But the sudden release of energy can also be caused from other reasons, other factors like volcanic activity, where the intrusion or the coming up of the pressure built up by the intruding magma, it also creates or builds up a lot of pressure and stress on the earth crust and therefore also inducing seismic waves. Which are responsible for causing the tremors on the earth crust. That is another cause of from where the energy is getting released. There are certain anthropogenic or human-made causes as well. For example, mining and extraction activities. heavy mining, heavy extraction that is done in the deeper grounds, there we will find that they also create the seismic waves, and they cause not the tectonic displacement, but they increases the tectonic vulnerability. They increases the vulnerability of the existing fault lines. So therefore, mining and extraction activities are one reason. Second is a reservoir or a dam or a heavy container of water. Because it induces a lot of pressure, therefore it also induces seismicity or seismic waves. For example, the Koyna Dam of Maharashtra, that region also saw a lot of earthquake. Why? Because of the presence of that man-made dam. That was the Koyna Dam. Koyna Dam. Then there are nuclear tests as well, because nuclear test put a lot of pressure upon the explosions. This can also induce seismicity. Now, how do you measure the earthquake? For example, in this particular news, the earthquake that has hit China is said to be of magnitude 6.2. How are we calculating this? So basically, there are two measures. One is the Richter scale, and the second one is the Mercalli scale. Richter scale is responsible for calculating the total amount of energy that has been produced. Therefore, it highlights the magnitude of the energy. So therefore, when we are saying that it is 6.2, it was measured on the Richter scale. While it only calculates the amount of energy, it doesn't calculate the impact it has on the lives and livelihood of the region. That is calculated by the Mercalli scale. So Mercalli is responsible for calculating the intensity. It is responsible for calculating the intensity or the amount of disaster that earthquake can create. So on the basis of Mercalli scale, on the basis of intensity, we have divided earthquakes, especially in India, where about 59% of the total land area is vulnerable or sensitive to the seismic hazard damage. So the entire map of India is broadly divided into 4 zones. Please remember, there is nothing like a zone 1. It starts from zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5 on the basis of Mercalli scale reading, Mercalli scale intensity. So on the basis of intensity, zones which are very high risk zones, those covered in red, they are having intensity of more than 10, that is 10.79. Then in the orange area, you can see those regions which are of high risk zone. They have intensity of 8. In the zone 3, the yellow region, you can see moderate risk zone, intensity of 7. And the low risk zone, zone 2, has a Mercalli scale reading of less than 6 or lower. So this was about the seismic zonation mapping of India, and you can use this map along with this data and proper zonations in your mains answer writing. When it comes to the distribution of earthquake across the world, we know that more than 60% of the earthquake and the tectonic activity, including volcanicity, happens in the Ring of Fire. In the Pacific Ring of Fire, so mostly it happens over here. Then it happens in the Mediterranean region because of the scrambling of multiple smaller Mediterranean plates. And then also in the Himalayan belt, where from one end, the Indian Ocean plate is moving towards north, the Eurasian plate is moving towards the west. And as a result of this, a convergent limbs get formed, and therefore, tectonic activity is prevalent in this region. And can you observe this particular region of China? This is also lying in one of the underlying zones of this convergent zone. Therefore, underlying limb of this convergent zone, and therefore, this is where the China has observed the earthquakes recently. Now, what can be the mitigation measures? Because as we know that earthquake is a hazard, it is a natural hazard which cannot be prevented, but it can definitely be mitigated, because you can always save a hazard from becoming a disaster if you secure the lives and livelihood of that place. For that, to understand that, a very brilliant case study can be observed from the year 2005. So what happened? There were 2 countries, both of them struck with similar magnitude of scales, relatively similar magnitude of earthquake. One was Japan, the other was Pakistan. Now Japan, because it has already learned from its previous experiences, had already built a disaster resilient infrastructure, had early warning systems installed, and as a result, when in the same year it got struck from a 7.9 magnitude earthquake, it amounted to 0 casualties. And it was applauded all across the world. While on the other hand, Pakistan, the country of Pakistan, when hit with in the very same year hit with a 7.1 magnitude of earthquake, it lost about 1 million lives. That is the amount, that is the importance and significance of the mitigation measures that the countries, especially those are prone to earthquake, must adapt. It all starts with installing early warning systems so that you can perform quick evacuations, rapid deployment of the task forces, etc. So early warning system, for example, in Japan 2011 and in Mexico 2017, both of the earthquakes and their casualties have been heavily avoided due to the early actions that were facilitated by the information given by the early warning systems. Next, building resilient infrastructure that is disaster resilient and also retrofitting the existing infrastructure. Best case studies in these regards are coming from Tokyo. Tokyo has got an epic building in the name of Skytree. I am advising that you must go to the Google and search it out how beautifully Skytree has been created, and it has been made such that it is one among the highest, loftiest towers across the world, and still it is earthquake resilient. Next, the Wellington Lifelines project of New Zealand, which is helped to retrofit the critical infrastructure, for example, the power grids, the nuclear power plants, etc. Next, we need preparedness, awareness and participation from the side of community. Public participation is very essential in order to carry out effective mitigation. So for example, in Nepal, we have community-based earthquake risk reduction program where community training is done. Community training and also community participation addressing the vulnerability of the area is done. Next, in California, earthquake drills are conducted in community halls, in schools, etc., which is also named as the Great Shakeout. So you can also quote these examples in your mains answers. We also want to seek international collaboration because earthquake is not a local event. It is a global event. It needs collaboration. Example of this is the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Tsunami also emerges as a side effect or as a resultant of the earthquake which has happened in the ground of ocean. So Tsunami Warning Center is also a collaborative effect of multiple countries which has helped to evade the disastrous effect of Pacific tsunami. Then the global seismographic network is also one among the best practices in the right direction. Then disaster response and recovery plans are required. So for example, disaster response and recovery plan at every state level, local level as well as national level and regional level should be created in order to collaborate, in order to pre-prepare the citizens, in order to pre-prepare the people, the livelihoods, etc. before the earthquake hits. So it will also ensure rapid deployment of the task force, temporary housing solutions will be created and also infrastructure repair efforts. All of this will be or should be a part of such plans. So in this way, we can avoid this natural hazard from becoming a ruthless disaster. Now talking about alternative investment funds. This is important from GST point of view and it is highly likely to be asked in prelims as well. Now RBI has tightened the norms for the lenders who have been investing in the alternative investment funds to prevent the evergreening of loans. What is the phenomenon of evergreening of loan? For example, I have a company and I am a lender and I have given your company 20 crores rupees. And I have told you that you should be giving or returning it to me in about 3 years. Now you know that according to the norms that are prevalent in India, if somebody defaults by over 90 days of the completion of the tenure, then the particular loan is considered as a non-performing asset. So it is all about recognizing a particular asset to be breaching the 90-day limit. But what if I manipulate this limit? What if I do not come under the recognition? So what I will do, once 2 years or say 3 years have been completed and you have not been able to recover my loan, pay back your loan, what I will do, I will further provide you 2 lakh worth of loan again. And I will say that you pay the entire amount in 3 years again. So what I am essentially doing, I am not accounting your bad loan into my non-profit assets. So therefore, I am saving my reputation as well as I am providing you more loans. But this is hurting the economy because here, Evergreening of loans leads to unprofitability of the lender, collapsing of the banks. In order to avoid this, in order to avoid the evergreening of the loans, RBI has said that there should be certain norms for the lenders who are investing in the alternative investment funds. Now, in order to provide evergreening effect, what I will do, I will create an alternative investment fund where I will ask multiple companies and investors to come and help the borrowers so that they can repay off their loan. So now we will be investing and then we will be distributing this money to our lender who will be using my own money to pay back my own money that I have lent to him. And as a result, though I have not been recorded or my asset is not considered now as a not profit asset, but it has actually led to my own loss. Because just in order to save from that recognition, save that reputation, what I have done, I have incurred huge amount of loss. So this is what alternative investment funds do. Now, alternative investment funds, what are they? So first of all, as the name suggests, these are the alternative sources of investments away from the traditional sources. Traditional sources includes investing in stocks or investing in bonds. But the alternative sources are those, for example, the venture capital fund, for example, the infrastructure fund, for example, some hedge funds. So these are some of the alternative funds. The unique feature about them is that they are unregulated entities. They are not coming into the bracket of, say, RBI or SEBI regulation. Therefore, yes, while they impose certain restrictions on them, they are heavily unregulated. These are the unregulated investment channels. RBI, SEBI itself, SEBI in its regulation of 2012 has also defined that it is any privately pooled investment fund which could be coming from Indian sources or foreign sources in the form of a trust or a company or a body corporate or an LLP which is not registered anywhere or which is not regulated by any regulatory body in India. Those are considered as alternative investment fund. Now you may ask that, ma'am, in this way we will be having so many alternative funds with us. So definitely there are many. In order to facilitate the classification, SEBI has took the lead and has classified the alternative investment fund into 3 categories depending upon their usability or their utility in the Indian economy. So category 1 funds are those funds which are essentially helping the Indian economy to growth. They help in capital investment in the right assets, for example, infrastructure. They also aid the job growth. They are good for the economy. Therefore, all of the funds that are created or classified under category 1 are provided concessions by the government. The government supports it. Why? Because some of the examples like venture capital fund, angel funds, what do? They help to provide funds in the innovation sector, in the startup sector, which boosts the employment and productivity of the economy. Therefore, they are provided concessions. Again, other examples like infrastructure fund, they also classify as a category 1 because they help to generate a multiplier effect in the economy in generating infrastructure of the country. Therefore, they are provided concessions by the government. So this has a positive effect on the economy. Now, category 2, which has zero effect on the economy, they are basically there to fulfill the day-to-day operational requirement. For example, to waive off the loans. So there could be debt funds, there could be fund of funds. So these are the funds which are invested both in equities and debts, and because they do not have any impact on the economy, therefore they are not provided any concessions by the government as well. Also, any category of fund which is not classified under category 1 and category 3 ultimately finds its place in category 2. Now talking about category 3 funds, these are the ones which have got negative impact on the economy. So they are the ones who have returns or give returns in very short period of time. They also tend to give very high returns. Therefore, here involves investment in those assets which are very risky. The more the risk, the higher the returns. And therefore, hedge funds are good examples of the category 3 alternative investment funds. Now, the drawbacks of alternative investment can be understood by understanding the restrictions of the SEBI. See, it is not regulated by anyone, but SEBI definitely imposes certain restrictions to it so that the Indian economy doesn't fall out of it. So first thing is that you cannot invest less than 1 crore. So only a high net worth investor can invest in this. Then not more than 1,000 investors should be present in one fund. Then There should be certain reporting norms as to where you have provided funding. Then restrictions on investable amount is also imposed. So how much amount of money can you invest in one particular company, that is regulated by SEBI restrictions. So when it is a category 1, a category 2 fund, which is very, very important for the economy, it is said that not more than 25% of your total fund can you allocate in one single company. And when it comes to category 3 fund, which are very high risk funds, so these are the ones which cannot put more than 10% of their total or overall fund in one company. So if a question comes to you in prelims examination that can an AIF fund completely or 100% allocate its fund into one company, the answer would be no in both the cases, in cases of category 1 and 2 and category 3 as well. So the issues with AIF is that first of all it is unregulated. Second, only high net worth investors are allowed into it. It requires large initial investment. AIFs are out of reach for small scale investors, and the other problem is the problem of liquidity because it has got long lockup period. The funds like category 1 and category 2, because we are investing say in infrastructure and venture capital and startups, etc. Therefore, usually the lock-in period is of 3 to 10 years. So once the amount is locked in, it will be locked in for a long period of time. Therefore, it can also cause cash crunch or liquidity crunch in the economy. So these are some of the drawbacks of alternative investment funds. Now, from prelims point of view, we will read about a cattle disease. This is the lumpy skin disease. As the name suggests, it is an outbreak in the form of a skin disease which shows lumps on the body. And this is not a zoonotic disease. Zoonotic diseases are those which are transferred from animal to human. This is not one. It does not impact human. It only impacts the bovine or the cattle. So it is a cattle disease. It is an animal disease, and recently the Parliamentary Standing Committee has raised concern about the accuracy of information that was published by the Department of Animal Husbandry and Dairying regarding the cattle deaths that happened from 2021 to 2022, during which a devastating outbreak of lumpy skin disease took place in about 20 states of India. Now let's quickly read about it. First of all, it is a viral disease. It is not a bacterial disease. Viral disease caused by Capri pox virus genus. Now this genus is also sharing its lineage with the sheep pox virus and the goat pox virus. And therefore, you must have read many times in news that the goat pox vaccine is used or is administered in the cattle which are suffering from the lumpy disease or the lumpy skin disease. Why? Because they belong to the same family. Next, how do they spread? So while no fixed reservoir of them is known, for example, bats for COVID or bats for Nipah, there is no particular reservoir, no particular host, but it can spread. It is a contagious disease which can spread through blood-sucking vectors like ticks, mites, houseflies, mosquitoes, etc. And also by consuming the contaminated water, contaminated fodder or contaminated feed. So they can very quickly spread from animal to animal. What is their prevalence? So initially, this was long restricted to only the sub-Saharan region, but with the global warming and the rising epidemical situations across the world, this disease started moving northward. So first it reached in the Middle East, in the Turkey region, then further it moved towards the eastern and southern parts of Europe, that is in the Balkan countries, in the Caucasus region, that is in the Eastern Europe, and in the Russia as well. India, Bangladesh and China have also got struck with lumpy skin disease ever since 2019, that is coinciding with the COVID outbreak only. And since then, about 20 Indian states have been affected by the lumpy skin disease. So this was about this particular disease. Now coming to the last topic of the day, here we will read about some of the disabilities that are created as a result of blood disorders in human body. It has been in news because people suffering from blood disorders like thalassemia, hemophilia and sickle cell disease have said to be not eligible for reservation in the government job that was promised by the Persons of Disabilities Act. And we will read about multiple disabilities in this act in the upcoming slide. And this has been said by Social Justice Ministry on Tuesday. So this is very, very important because here we will read that while the Persons with Disabilities Act, it actually wanted to restore the rights that should be given to the disabled people in the form of their economic, social and educational empowerment. Some of the patients who are suffering from these disabilities due to the blood disorders which are genetic to them, which are genetic in nature, they are kept aloof of the reservation. Now, which are these diseases? These are thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease. You can find it in the Rights of Persons with Disability Act of 2017. So here, the total number of disabilities that would be getting rights would be 21. It got enlarged from 7 to 21. It also includes thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease. Now, if a question gets asked in prelims examination, that all the disabilities or all the disease or disabilities mentioned in this particular act also are given governmental reservation, then it would be a wrong statement, because 3 of them, as we can see, are not accorded any governmental reservation. Now let's talk about it. Sickle cell anemia. Now, as you know, what is the structure of a typical RBC? It is a disc-like structure. But what happens if certain genetic mutation takes place? This genetic disorder will make it sickle in shape or in C-shaped. As a result, this will become more elongated. As a result, the flow of blood will also be hampered, and therefore the blood will start accumulating because of the accumulation of RBCs, because of the enlargement of the cells or the RBC cells. So therefore, clumps of sickle cells will start happening across the arteries and the blood vessels, and therefore it will block the blood to flow in the other parts of the body, especially to the organs, and as a result it will lead to tissue failure, organ damage, serious infection, etc. This is sickle cell anemia. You must also remember that all of them are inherited disorders which are related to blood. Next is thalassemia. Now, thalassemia is when, due to a genetic disorder, our body abnormally produces very low amount of hemoglobin in the body. Now, hemoglobin is the one responsible for keeping the RBCs alive. RBCs are able to capture oxygen, keep themselves alive, and also able to transport the oxygen, because the oxygen gets attached to the molecule of hemoglobin. But what if body doesn't produces enough hemoglobin? Then the RBC cells also starts dying. And as a result, you will see that there will be improper oxygen transport inside the body. The color of the skin will turn very, very pale, and it will also lead to destruction of the red blood cells, eventually leading to death of the patient. This is more important for India because India is considered as a thalassemia capital of the world, with more than 1 lakh patients suffering from thalassemia. And last is the disease of hemophilia. If you break down the word, it stands for blood loving, which means once you have got a cut in your body, the blood doesn't stop, because the blood clotting ability has been hindered due to certain factors. So whenever you get a scratch or a cut, the first person or the first body organelle to come and attack at the site in order to cure it, to provide it a natural bandage, are called platelets. The functioning of this platelet, actually, the molecules of these platelets are compacted by certain fibrous cells, and these fibrous cells are also known as certain factors. So in human body, it has about 12 factors, and among these factors, if you lack factor number 8 and factor number 9, then the sheeting or the compacting of these platelets do not happen, and therefore the blood clot that has occurred because of the coagulation of the platelets, that will be disrupted, that will be destabilized, and therefore no matter how much amount of platelet is required, it will always be vanished, shattered, because of the destabilization, because of the lack of this net which is provided by the factor 8 and factor 9. Therefore, this is a bleeding disorder. It leads to infinite bleeding. How to cure all of them? There is no medicine for this, but what we can do, we can perform blood transfusion, and at the same time we can also ensure that these agents, these factors, are also introduced in the body using genetic engineering or using some other methods. So this was about the blood disorders, and the blood disorders which also leads to disabilities which have been accorded rights under the Right of Persons with Disabilities Act. So this was all about today's discussion. I hope you have liked it. Thank you so much and have a nice day.